When we hear stories of people successfully escaping kidnapping, we can't help but feel inspired. It's something taken straight out of an action movie. In real life, however, kidnapped victims have used courage and ingenuity to assure their safe return home. In this video, we're going to take a closer look at some remarkable individuals who were able to come back from their brink despite having been kidnapped in harrowing situations. Here are the top 10 kidnapper victim escape stories and their brave attempts to reclaim their freedom and survive. Before we get started, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that bell to be notified when we post more amazing videos like this in the future. Now, here we go. Number 10. Amanda Berry, Gina DeJesus, and Michelle Knight. Rescued May 6, 2013. The kidnapping of Amanda Berry, Gina DeJesus, and Michelle Knight began in 2002 when Knight vanished in Cleveland at the age of 21. A year later, Berry disappeared at 16, and Gina followed in 2004 at 14. For almost a decade, the women were held captive by their kidnapper, Ariel Castro, and were subject to brutal torture, including physical confinement using chains and ropes. However, on May 6, 2013, thanks to two heroic neighbors, Angel Cordona and Charles Ramsey, who heard Berry's screams for help from inside the house, they were able to break free. Police soon arrived on the scene, and the three victims were liberated after over 9 years in captivity. Number 9. Jaycee Lee Dugard, rescued August 26, 2009. Jaycee Lee Dugard's incredible story began on June 10, 1991, when she was abducted at the age of 11 while walking to a school bus stop in South Lake Tahoe, California. For 18 years, her whereabouts were unknown until August 2009 when Philip Craig Garrido and his wife Nancy were arrested for kidnapping and sexual assault after they arrived at UC Berkeley with two girls, one of whom was identified as Dugard. The criminal couple pleaded guilty to their charges. Philip received an almost unheard of 431-year sentence and Nancy received 36 years. In 2011, Jaycee released her memoirs called A Stolen Life, a Memoir, which detailed her horrific experience. All proceeds from the book went to benefit the victim and her family. Number 8. Natascha Maria Kampusch, escaped on August 23, 2006. Natascha Maria Kampusch was kidnapped on March 2, 1998 at the age of 10 and held captive for 8 years in a secret cellar behind a cupboard. The tiny soundproof room had no windows, making escape extremely difficult. However, she managed to flee when her captor permitted her to clean his BMW in the garden. She immediately ran to a nearby neighbor who called the police and alerted them of the situation. Her successful escape shocked and inspired people around the world, leading her to become a global spokesperson and influence many with her story. Number 7. Elizabeth Smart, found alive on March 12th of 2003. Elizabeth Smart's abduction was one of the most notorious kidnappings in 2002. On June 5th, 14-year-old Elizabeth Smart was taken from her bedroom at knife point by Brian David Mitchell in Salt Lake City, Utah. The abduction triggered an extensive search and investigation that eventually led to the drawing of Mitchell being featured on America's Most Wanted. After 9 months of captivity, Elizabeth was spotted traveling with Mitchell and Wanda Lean Barzee in Sandy, Utah by a bike who had seen the America's Most Wanted program the night before. This alert led to police intervening, and Elizabeth returned to her family safe and sound after her 9 months of captivity. The story of Elizabeth's kidnapping and recovery has become part of an international folklore, with a book published about it as well as a movie made for television. Number 6. Katie Beers, found alive on January 13, 1993. Katie Beers was just 10 years old when she was kidnapped by a family friend, John Esposito, on December 28, 1992. Authorities searched without success for Katie's whereabouts until they received an anonymous tip that led them to Esposito's underground bunker in Bayshore, New York. After 2 grueling weeks of captivity in the 20 by 20 foot bunker, police were finally able to locate and rescue Beers on January 13, 1993. After her rescue, Beers was able to go on and lead a normal life with the help of therapy and support from her adoptive parents. In 2013, she wrote a book called Buried Memories, Katie Beers' Story, which detailed her experience throughout her captivity and recovery. Number 5. Colleen Stan, escaped in 1984. Colleen Stan was a 20-year-old hitchhiker who was kidnapped in 1977 by Cameron Hooker and his wife Janice. For the next 7 years, she was kept captive and subjected to brutal physical and psychological torture, including being locked in a coffin for up to 23 hours a day. Miraculously, on April 24, 1984, Stan managed to escape with help from Hooker's mother after convincing him to let her visit her family. As for Cameron Hooker, he received multiple consecutive sentences for sexual assault, kidnapping, and using a knife in the process, for a total of 104 years imprisonment. Number 4. Stephen Stayner and Timothy White escaped March 1, 1980. Stephen Stayner was abducted at the age of 7 while walking home from school in Merced, California. He was held captive by convicted child rapist Kenneth Parnell until he was 14. Parnell then abducted 5-year-old Timothy White on Valentine's Day, 1980, and his kidnapping deeply disturbed Stayner. On March 1, 1980, Stayner escaped with White and hitchhiked into Ukiah to the police station for help. This prompted California lawmakers to change state laws to allow consecutive prison terms for similar abduction cases. Stephen sadly died in 1989 in a motorcycle accident, but left behind a wife and 2 children as evidence of his remarkable post-abduction recovery. Number 3. Patty Hearst, arrested September 1975. Patty Hearst is one of the most famous kidnapped victims who successfully escaped her captors. In September of 1975, she was kidnapped by a terrorist organization called the Symbionese Liberation Army and subjected to brainwashing. She was initially arrested for participating in a bank robbery with the SLA, but after 2 years of imprisonment, it became apparent that she was an unwilling victim. Her sentence was eventually commuted by President Jimmy Carter and then fully pardoned by President Bill Clinton in the last official act before leaving office, cementing her status as one of the most notorious survivors of a kidnapping and Stockholm Syndrome. Number 2. Frank Sinatra Jr., freed on December 1963. Barry Keenan, Johnny Irwin, and Joe Amsler were behind the daring kidnap of Frank Sinatra Jr. in December of 1963. The 19-year-old was held for 2 days before his famous father paid the hefty ransom of $240,000 demanded by the kidnappers. After the money exchange was made, Sinatra Jr. was freed, and the 3 perpetrators were arrested shortly after that. The trio received a lengthy prison sentence for their crimes, with Keenan facing the brunt of the 7-year sentence as the instigator of the plot. As a result of their actions, this particular case goes down as one of the most high-profile kidnap cases in history due to having involved a member of celebrity royalty. Number 1. Helen of Troy. Date unknown. Helen of Troy is one of the oldest and most famous cases of kidnapping in the world. According to Greek mythology, she was kidnapped by Prince Paris, son of King Priam, from her home in Sparta and taken to Troy as a captive bride. Her abduction resulted in a 10-year siege against Troy that ultimately led to its destruction. Although her exact date of escape is unknown, Helen eventually found refuge in Egypt after leaving Troy with Paris following the conclusion of the war. The tale of this ancient kidnapping has been told and retold throughout history over thousands of years. And that's all we have for today. We hope you enjoyed this video. If so, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and drop us a comment down below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.